human behavior, not only behavior, human behavior, human attitudes, preferences, opinions, intentions, all of these constructs that we can hardly to measure with physical tools. We can measure it through the questionnaire. So the questionnaire is very important to us as researchers. And this is a comment by Peterson and Keren in 1981, say that most of what we know about human behavior stems from answers to research questions posed in questionnaires. So this is give us the importance of the questionnaire. Also, additionally, all of the companies that measure customer satisfaction, for example, or customer loyalty, customer intention, usually use questionnaire to do that. Many times when we buy any product or service, we usually get a questionnaire from the company asking about whether we are satisfied with the customer, with the product, with the service that we have or not. So questionnaire is a very important tool. So what is a questionnaire? Usually the questionnaire is a research instrument that consists of a set of questions that aim to collect data from selected respondents. So a questionnaire is a group of questions that usually sent or given to the respondents or participants of the research in order to answer them, and we collect this data in order to answer a very broad question of the research, for example, or if we want to solve a problem of the research. Usually we need to get answers from the people in order to know their opinions about the subject, and then we answer the research question. So what are the components usually of the research? You know that we have three components, or three parts of the questionnaire. The first part is the introductory section, and then we have also the main question section, and this is the most important section in the questionnaire. And finally, we have the demographic questions. And as you can see here, we put the demographic questions at the end of the questionnaire, because we will see, inshallah, later on that the demographic questions are so important. However, the research questions are more important than the demographic questions. So first of all, the introductory section, and the main purpose for the introductory section is to, for example, first of all, give idea to the participants about our research and what we want to measure, what we want to do in the research, and also to encourage those respondents to answer the questions by giving them, or by telling them the importance of this research and what can we do by the data that they provide. In the same time, we need also to assure and to tell the respondents that their data is confidential, and we will not share your data with any third party, so that they can trust us, and they can share their information with us. Moreover, we can also add the time, or the approximate time to answer the questions. So, for example, if we say you can answer the questions in 5 minutes, so that when the respondent does not have 5 minutes to complete the questionnaire, he will postpone, for example, doing the questionnaire, or do it later on. So this is the introductory section. As you can see here, introductory section should have sufficient information about the research project, the importance of completing the questionnaire, the time to complete all questions, and assure of confidentiality or anonymity of the participants. The second and the most important part in the questionnaire is the main questions section. And here we should be more logical. All the questions that ask the same topic or the same idea should be grouped together in order for the participants to see that the research questions are very easy and to be relaxed when answering the questions. Because when they shift from one topic to another topic, then it will give them some confusion about the research, and so that they cannot answer the question in a clear way. Finally, the demographic questions here. The demographic questions, some of researchers put the demographic questions at the beginning of research. And in my view, it is not a good idea to put the demographic questions at the beginning for some reasons. First of all, the research questions, you should put first the easy questions for respondents to answer. You should go from the easiest question to the difficult question. And then the demographic questions are not difficult by themselves. Rather, some of the information that are shared in the demographic questions are sensitive and personal, so that when the respondents see those questions at the beginning, they will feel unsafe, or sometimes they will feel unrelaxed, because you don't give them the main questions, okay, and they think if they share their information and link those information and identity of them with the research questions, then they might have some difficulties, or they might be in troubles. But if you put them at the end, it's like you say to them, this is my research. You saw all the questions of my research. Then the last part, or the last step in answering the questionnaire, is just to give me this information about yourself, and I will use this information I will use them only for classification and for just statistical purposes. Okay, so the demographic questions usually also must be preceded by a very clear statement saying that, for example, here the following questions are for statistical purpose only. You need to make some transition between the research questions and the demographic questions. Okay, these are the steps in constructing a questionnaire. As you can see here, we have 7 steps. The first step is to review information requirements, develop research questions, evaluate potential research questions, determine types of questions to be asked, decide on specific wording on each question, determine questionnaire structure, and finally evaluate questionnaire. Let us take it one by one. For example, the first one, review information requirements. Of course, if you do research, you know that first of all you need to decide or define the gap in your research. And this is done usually by literature review. When you read a lot of literature about the subject, sometimes you find research gap here or there, and then you try to focus on this gap and make your research based on this gap. So understanding the general objectives and understanding your topic very well help you in defining and help you in constructing your research questions later on. For example, if we know what we want to know from this research and how the information will be used, that make our research easier and make our research going smooth without any ambiguity or without any problems. So first of all, understanding the general objective of research project. Next is to develop research questions. And here, by the way, we have, as you know that we have research problem. And from the research problem, we can derive the research questions. And after that, the research objectives and so on. So the research questions here can be also help in doing the questionnaire questions. The research questions should be as specific as possible. Here we are talking about the questionnaire questions, the questions that are in the questionnaire, because those questions help us in answering the research questions. So it should be as specific as we can. Each research question should be screened with respect to the following: how the answers will be analyzed, the anticipated information that it will provide, and how this information will be used. Each question should be screened based on these criteria. Next, if we take the questions one by one, for example, we can take the first question, okay, and just think about these three criteria or these three ideas. First of all, can participants understand the question? Okay, if they understand the question, can they answer the question? And if they can answer the question, will they answer the question? Let us take it one by one. For example, here the first one, can participants understand the questions? Most of the time, if we have a research, for example, in marketing, and we are talking, for example, about market share, for example, we want to ask respondents about market share, or about, for example, growth rate of the company, or about some economical concepts like inflation. Okay, we need to make sure that respondents understand what we are talking about. In one research done in the United States, the researcher wanted to ask about the profit, the organizational profit. Okay, and the question was asked verbally to respondents. One of the respondents was an old woman. When the researcher asked her the question like this: when I say profit, what comes in your mind? When I say profit, what comes in your mind? Immediately, the old woman say, I know Prophet Moses, Prophet Jesus, and tried to list the prophets of God. Where in the question, the researcher was asked about the organization profit. So the woman here did not know what the researcher mean by profit. So here we need to make sure that the respondents understand the question very well. Understanding the question also, the meaning of the question has two types, which is the absolute meaning and relevant meaning. And absolute meaning, the words that we all know. the meaning of. It does not have any other meanings. This is what we call it absolute meaning. And relevant meaning sometimes when we ask about something related to culture. And for example, some words in one culture has a different meaning than in other culture. So we need to make sure that the respondents understand the absolute and relative meaning of the words in the question. Can they answer the question? Sometimes if we ask about an old event, for example, an event happened before 5 or 10 years, okay, most of the time we could not recall the answer. So we cannot answer the question because we don't recall, we don't remember the event. And this is what we call it recall errors. Or sometimes if the question put some dates, for example, when did you buy your house? And they put, for example, in 1990, in 1995, or something like this. And the respondent answer with one date, which is incorrect because the respondent do not remember the exact date. This is what we call it telescoping errors. Telescoping errors when the respondent does not know exactly or does not remember exactly the correct date. Will they answer the question? Here, sometimes some of the questions are very sensitive or very personal. Like, for example, if I'm asking about the income or for example, religious preferences or religious orientations, مثلا. Or we can ask about sexual orientation. These are some sensitive and personal information that sometimes some respondents prefer to not to answer them. So we need also to make sure that the respondents will answer the question. Okay, number 4, we need to determine the types of questions to be asked. Okay, we have 2 types mainly. You know that we have 2 types of questions. We have the open-ended questions and the closed-ended questions. The open-ended questions are those questions that do not have a certain and specific answers to them. You just ask the question and let the respondent to write or to say the answer verbally. Actually, the open-ended questions are very easy to construct, but they are very hard to analyze because they need, for example, they need, first of all, content analysis. You need to analyze the content of the respondents, of the answers, and then group the respondents into different groups based on their answers, and then you need to code or make some coding scheme for their answers, so that it will be very difficult. And the coding scheme usually used for the analysis. If you want to use, for example, statistical analysis, SPSS, or any other statistical tools to analyze, then you need to make some codes for the answers. Because that the open-ended questions is preferred to be used in these 5 ways. For example, when a researcher does not have enough information about the study, then the researcher can use open-ended questions, and it will be like an exploratory research. The researcher wants to explore the topic more in order to change or to define the best answers for the questions. Or when a researcher wants to ensure that answers will not be influenced by predetermined answers. For example, if you write, what's your age, for example, and you write some age groups, okay? You don't want the respondents to choose other than those groups that you define. But sometimes the respondent want something else other than that. So we can, for example, use open-ended questions in this time, in the time that we don't want the, we want the respondent to be free to answer anything. Also, we can use open-ended questions when a certain variable need to be measured. Like, for example, if I ask the respondent about their preferred brands, for example, what is your preferred mobile brand or car brand or something like this? You don't want to put a predefined brand so that it will influence the answers for the question. Also, we can use the open-ended question when certain trends need to be monitored over time with existence of unexpected events. Maybe we want to measure a construct, or we want to measure a trend over time. Then we can use open-ended questions. And finally, we can use open-ended questions as a follow-up question. Like, for example, if you put a closed-ended question and then ask if you do you have any other idea or anything other than that, and it comes in three types, like explanatory or probe or elaboration questions. Explanatory, like, for example, we say, why did you say that? If he choose something, then we can ask, why did you choose that, or why did you say that? The probe question is, for example, asking anything else you want to say. If the respondent says something or choose something, then you write this another question. And finally, the elaboration question, you want the respondent to elaborate more on his or her answer. So as I said, it is easy to construct but hard to analyze. And to analyze the answers, you need to make content analysis, combining answers into subgroups, okay, developing a coding scheme whereby all answers can be categorized. A good coding scheme is one in which there is one and only one code for every answer. This is a good coding scheme. And every answer can be coded, okay? So this is about the open-ended questions. In the closed-ended questions, it's very hard to construct, but it is very easy to analyze. Why it's hard to construct? Because most of the time, if you don't have enough information about the subject that you are researching in, that will be difficult for you to make closed-ended questions. So in the closed-ended question, there are three important requirements. The first one is to have good knowledge of the study participants, and also good knowledge of research subject, and also you need to know how the answers will be used in your research. In the closed-ended questions, you can construct, or you can make the questions, and also you can borrow the questions from previous research, previous literature. And most of the time we use SERV-QUAL, for example, or any other scale that we get from previous research. These are the criteria to follow in order to have good research questions. You need to be brief, or the question should be brief and should be relevant to the research and should be clear. Okay, using unknown or using very rare words or concepts or terms can make your question very difficult to respondents. Therefore, they will not answer your questions. The questions should be specific and finally should be objective. And objective here means unbiased. How can the question be biased? By, for example, here we have some what we call it presuppose comments. Like, for example, you write, isn't it? Okay, you ask a question and then you say, isn't it? This means that you want the respondent to choose a specific choice or a specific sentence. Or for example, you say, don't you agree? Or like, for example, you write a question and then you say, a lot of people agree about that. Then it will give the respondent what we call it social agreement. And in social agreement means that any respondent want to respond like the other people, does not want to respond by his opinion or by his choice. And also the time is very important in asking the research questions. However, in the research, usually we have what we call the rating scales. And in rating scales are the closed-ended questions with answers that are organized to measure continuous construct. And here, continuous construct, usually we have 4 types of data with respect to research questions or to research answers. We have the nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio, and these are the 4 types. And nominal means that the response number. For example, if you write, what is your city? This is your question. What is your current city? And then you write Riyadh, Jeddah, Dammam, Medina, and so on. And each city has a number. This number does not have any meaning. It's just for numbering the cities. And this is what we call it nominal. The ordinal is not like nominal. It has orders. Like, for example, if you write what is your education level, and you write PhD, master, bachelor, and so on. So each one of these choices or if these responses has a number. Of course, PhD, if PhD, for example, has 5, that means 5 is larger or bigger than number 4, and so on in the educational level. Interval and ratio. Usually, interval and ratio are used in the empirical studies, and what we call it the it's not a theoretical studies. It's rather they are empirical studies. In the empirical studies or quantitative studies, usually we measure some constructs. For example, in the interval are the numerical values. No true zero. There is no zero. There is no true zero here. For example, between 1 and 2, there are unlimited points here. There are unlimited space between 1 and 2. So this is the interval with order and ability to use statistical analysis. We usually use interval in For example, analyzing data related to any constructs like intention or attitude or behavior, we use interval. In the ratio, numerical values with 0 as a starting point. So here there is no negative values. If we are, for example, measuring the temperature, for example, there is no, we start, for example, from 0. Actually, yes, sometimes, or the tone. If we are measuring the tone, there is no -1 or -2. We start from 0. The age, the same thing. We use we start from 0. So here in the bottom line here, we have interval measures differences between variables, the differences between variables, and ratio measures fractions between them. Okay, now if we think about the number of responses in each questions, what is the best number? Based on some literature, like for example Miller 1956, argue that the optimal number is 7 plus or minus 2. This is the optimal number of responses. So for example, if you want to make a scale, you need to make sure that your responses is between, for example, 7 and or 5 and 9. Yeah, 5 and 9. And it should be odd numbers, because odd numbers usually have a middle point in the middle, for neutral, usually used for neutral. However, if a researcher wants to make broad generalization, if you want to make generalization to your findings, okay, you need to have 7 or less. But sometimes, if your sample is homogeneous and similar to each others, for example, if you have a research and you want your respondents from one culture, like for example Saudi culture here, or in Riyadh city, for example, and here the sample can be homogeneous, means they will be similar to each others. So in this case, you need to have a larger scale to measure the small differences between those respondents. So you need to have 7 or more. The types of responses, usually, you know that sometimes if we want to use a comparison scale, we can use much more until much less. And there are many responses between them. Or endorsement, definitely true, to definitely not true. Frequency, always, to never. Influence, for example, major influence to minor influence. Intensity, for example, and this is usually we used it in marketing research and in social sciences research in general. Strongly agree to strongly disagree. We have sometimes used non-verbal responses, like the smiley faces, and this is usually used in, for example, in measuring customer satisfaction in airports, for example, or using the social media, or using the internet. Sometimes they use smiley faces or star rating, or for example, if you want to measure the satisfaction or measure the quality of something, they put star rating, or sometimes thermometer to measure. These are some non-verbal responses. We have a very famous scale which is Likert scale. And Likert scale is a 5-point scale that starts from strongly agree to strongly disagree, as you can see here. Okay, sometimes we make it in opposite order. The strongly disagree 1 and strongly agree is 5, because it is actually it's based on your research. Okay, if you want, for example, the agreement is larger than disagreement, then you use the opposite way. Okay, and so on. This is a Likert scale, and also we have another predefined scales or specific rating scales like the semantic differential scale. And here, as you can see, the semantic differential scale is a bipolar scale, which is two extreme terms, like for example, good and bad here, extremes, and the scale is between them, and the respondent will choose one of these numbers between the two extremes. So it is 7 points, bipolar scale. Also, we have stable scale, and the stable scale here is unipolar. And when we say unipolar here, unipolar, it has only one term in the middle. For example, if we want to measure customer service, okay, without good and bad, like in the previous scale. Okay, we put the term here, and we put the scale, like for example, from -5 to 5, and it is, as you can see, it is a 10 points unipolar scale, and the respondent will choose one of them. Okay, so if we use a scale, which is better? We choose single item or multi-item scale. And when we say single item, as you know, that a single item is one question or one sentence that measure the construct that we want to measure it. And the multi-item is more than one sentence, more than one question to measure the same construct. In the previous literature, some of researchers say that, like for example here, Diamantopoulos, 2012, said that under most conditions, multi-item scales clearly outperform single item. So multi-item usually is better than single item. Okay, but multi-item, when we say multi-item, usually we need to make sure that these 4 conditions must be met in the multi-item scale. And those conditions are, for example, the first one is the unidimensionality. And unidimensionality, the scale measures only one thing. If we have different sentences or different questions, we need to make sure that all these sentences measure the same construct. If we want to measure, for example, customer satisfaction, all the sentences must measure customer satisfaction, and so on. Also, the reliability. And reliability, as you know, that the reliability, the scale generates same result repeatedly. If we use the scale different times, then we get the same result or the same trend in the results. Validity, the scale measures what it designed to measure. So here, reliability and validity are very important in the multi-item scales. And finally, generalizability. Okay, the scale can be used in different settings and generate results than can be generalized. Oh, by the way, generalizability here it depends on the construct that we want to measure. For example, some constructs, if we measure, for example, the religious orientation in Saudi Arabia, for example, we cannot generalize the findings in other culture. Generalizability is not always true for multi-item scales. Okay, so here this is just some points about the constructs that I want to share with you, and I know that most of you know better than me about the subject. However, if you want to make to have more information about the subject, these are very nice books about constructing questionnaire. This actually the first book, this one, Constructing Effective Questionnaire, this is what I used mainly in this presentation, and I have this book. It is very nice and it's very helpful in having a lot of information about questionnaire, and it's written by Robert Peterson. And also this is one of the good. However, I did not read all of this book because it is similar to this one. But it has more idea about the survey research in general, not only questionnaire. And here when we say survey research, we are talking about the process, all the process of research, not only the questionnaire, which is a tool, which is only the tool of making survey. Survey is the process, questionnaire is the tool. This is also the a good book, and this book, by the way, it is one of the OU courses, which is I think B300, and it is related to market research. It is a very nice book. You can have this book from the bookstore in the university. And this also, this is a good book. However, I did not also read all this book. Asking Questions, the Definitive Guide to Questionnaire Design for Market Research, Political Polls, and Social and Health Questionnaires. Thank you very much for your listening, and I hope that everything is clear. If you have any questions or any comments, we can share anything now. Thank you.